Hey, what's going on, y'all? This is Frank with another episode of the Real Raw Exchange Podcast. And can I get my co hosts to introduce themselves?
Hey, this is Nat.
I'm Lady D.
Okay.
And I'm Sunny.
All right. So this week we got Sunny on the panel to be able to contribute to the conversation, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be a great one because we are going to continue on with talking about COVID. Now, one of the things that I wanted to explore as far as talking about COVID is mental health. Like, one of the things that we did mention in the previous episode is in reference to now, families being in that dynamic of having to come together and essentially being, in every sense of the word, kind of forced to now really get along and be in the same household and, see everybody, 24/7 within a day. And it essentially breaks the routine that they had before in reference to, the parents going out to work, the children going to school, nobody being in the household really. More so, I would say more so for middle class, America. But one of the things that I now noticed is, of course, definitely when it comes down to the divorce rates, you know, people not really, being used to seeing their family, on a 24/7 basis. And now having to cope with being able to see their family and then also potentially having to learn other coping mechanism or learn other communication tools in reference to being around their family, Like to give an example, you'll, have, the wife and the husband, now having to be under the same roof, they now see each other 24/7. There's certain things that they're used to as far as going to work and then coming home, going to work and then coming home, that routine. But now having to be in the same household and then having to telework, you're still around who you're around. So there may be an expectation of, okay, well, if I'm still around you, then I expect you to do the things that you would do when I am around you within a short amount of time. Let's just say anywhere from like let's give it about 8 to 10 hours. 8 to 10 hours, out of the day that you're around your spouse. Within those 8 to 10 hours, now I expect you to do within those 8 to 10 hours what now I need specifically within the 24 hours because I'm around you, and every time I see you, I have those expectations. So anybody want to take it from there?
Uh, I I think for me it was less about the spouse and more about having to deal with the loss of people during COVID, and then trying to figure out your play, because I lost my grandmother during COVID, but not because of
Okay.
COVID.
Yeah.
And so to go from being a caregiver
Mm-hmm.
to now not, that for me changed my mental health a little bit, because I had to find my place um now not having her here.
Okay.
So it was a little bit different, like versus somebody always being there during COVID,
Mm-hmm.
like your spouse, and then all of a sudden not, or being separated, because that's the other side of it.
Right. 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 Like yeah, like people having losses in the family, definitely it's definitely going to affect your mental health. In addition to that, the aspect of who you have closest to you as family,
Yeah.
now from the dynamic of now you're not going to be able to see them, but you want to be able to mourn in the best way possible because you love them, you cared about them, and now you're having to deal with the dynamic of mourning during the time this pandemic is hit, and now you're in the household, you're not necessarily going out
And you
consistently.
still gotta do everything you need to do in the house and be functional.
It definitely be functional, definitely. Anybody got anything else?
I was going to say that I agree with both. And then I was going to add that in addition to being in the house, you have to think about like the physical isolation that you have from everyone outside, kind of. So you're in the house, you can't really interact with people that don't live with you as much.
Hmm.
Well, not physically. So you still have like, you can teleconference, you can call, you can use all these social media platforms to kind of communicate, but there is no physical contact, with the exception of those who you live with.
Hmm.
And then we know not everybody kind of obeyed the whole stay home, right? So you had some families and some friends who was leaving home to go visit other people, close people probably that they know, and so they probably got some interaction. But the physical isolation part, I think, for a lot of people, hit really hard during COVID.
Right, right, right. One thing that I kind of think about in reference to the physical isolation is well, two things. Two things, one of the two things definitely happened to me. One thing is people who are used to isolating themselves, or maybe potentially could be more introverted, compared to ones who would be considered more extroverted. Now, I consider myself to kind of be an ambivert, but I have more introverted tendencies. you know, ambivert just in the middle, combination between introvert and extrovert, where I believe for the introverts, you know, more so, it was more so a time for them to be able to replenish their energy compared to the extroverts. More so, it was a time that they would struggle with because they gained the most energy from being around other people. They build their energy off of being around other people more so, you know. So for me, when it came down to now going, essentially teleworking, not truly being able to go anywhere, or for that matter, not necessarily being able to be around my coworkers or be around friends of mine, it put me in a mindset of, okay, I know I have to deal with this. I can, be able to be as resilient as possible when it comes down to this. But also in turn, I miss my family. I miss friends. I miss, shooting a breeze with, coworkers. Us, being able to talk shit to one another in addition to being able to crack jokes. Us being able to work, together. Being able to, accomplish a mission. I do miss that. But more so, what is at the forefront of my mind is I know I can get through this. You know, I don't know if that's just
Yeah.
based on how, I've been brought up, how I was raised, how I've conditioned myself, how things have conditioned me. I really don't know. But I know where my mind is right now, and I do know where my mind was when it came down to me teleworking last year. What do y'all think?
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that sentiment in terms of like you feeling like you had been conditioned, personally, to be able to navigate through, a situation where, everyone is pretty much self-isolating. And I definitely would say that for me, it wasn't as much of a as a culture shock or, anything like that, being told to stay home as much as possible, because I am someone who, is okay with being at home, or quote unquote a homebody.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't struggle as much as some of my other friends and colleagues and family members in terms of just being forced to stay home for an extended amount of time. I was perfectly okay with that. Um, but it was also, I wanted to make a comment about just the whole idea of having to adjust to, being away from family and interacting with them differently, um, and not being able to mourn properly during all this loss that we've seen.
Hmm.
It was just like thinking about, for me, it was hard for me to think about the amount of tragedy, that was taking place, and it's almost like you're seeing all these deaths and it's happening every day, but because it may not be happening to you personally, people were able to, I feel like people were able to, have some sort of dissonance, or it didn't feel as real, for people that weren't taking the pandemic as seriously as the health experts were telling us to take it seriously. Like, people are dying every day.
Yeah.
The hospitals were just going through a lot of, or the healthcare field in general was just going through a lot of mess, and most of us didn't see that stuff like head on, but being like someone like me, who my mom is a nurse, she like would have to come home, and during the beginning stages of COVID, she would have to come home and make sure that everyone was like cleared out in a different part of the house, because they were being told to not interact with family members when they were just coming from, the hospital. Or she does geriatrics too, so she works with older folks, and she would have to make sure that everyone was clear in a different part of the house, so that she wouldn't be potentially exposing herself to the rest of the family members and stuff like that. So that was a bit strange too, to just to be in that sort of reality. It was very strange.
Yeah.
Can I say something to that point that she just mentioned?
Yeah, of course.
I was gonna say I can relate to. Now, my mom is not a nurse or anything, but my sister worked, and I'm not gonna disclose where she worked, but she worked where they were testing COVID, which I think is very dangerous, and it really just kind of put the employees on an alert. And at that time, we were like living together. So when she would come home, she would be like, you know, and it was not room for us to isolate in her apartment in DC. So that's a whole nother thing. I was like living by myself, and she came down from Philly. So we were in this transition period of her actually moving out, right?
Yeah.
But that didn't happen because then COVID hit. A lot of things happened at one time. So we just kind of stayed put. Um, Sharing this apartment, and now they're testing COVID in her building where she works. That's a danger to her, and even to the people who's testing it. And I was just in awe of just that. Like, that was that was something that I kind of had went through. But
Yeah, like it's very interesting to find out, you know, what ones are going through that are actually doing certain professions that puts them in more danger than not. You know, when it comes down to nurses, when it comes down to ones that are now, are literally right beside, the room that they're actually testing, COVID-19, being able to test it in the various ways to be able to test it. But the ones who are on those missions, the ones that are actually helping out with those missions in reference to, you know, medical professionals, in addition to ones that are doing the testing to, find out, better ways to be able to create a better vaccine or what may have you, those are the ones that we truly need to thank. Those are the ones that we truly need to have a mindset of. Those are the ones that are, taking the one for the team, taking the one for, the United States, locals, the American people. Those are the ones that we more so need to think about in reference to, putting themselves in danger, in addition to, potentially going through specific traumas that maybe they wouldn't even speak on, let alone really understand themselves until after all of this is done. You know, maybe, you know, it's kind of this thing of, you don't really know what you really have gone through until you truly think about it. You don't really know what you have really gone through until you truly think about it. You know, to give an example, I know for me during the pandemic or when it first sparked off, I know for me, maybe to some degree, I could understand some of the health that I gained, positive health that I gained, positive mental health that I gained in reference to being isolated. Let me explain. Where I know for my job specifically, there are particular things that I know that I go through on a daily basis that I know for a fact I don't like being around on a daily basis, you know, especially in reference to certain individuals that I may work around that have a certain mindset of how they see me or have a certain mindset on how my character is, but in their mind, they still project what they believe I am. And that projection can be negative. That projection could potentially be racist. That projection could be, prejudice. That projection could exude a certain level of bigotry. That projection could now make me feel like, well, I know for a fact I'm not inadequate, you know. I know for a fact I'm not inadequate when it comes down to certain things. I know there are things that I need to grow upon, especially me being able to do my job better, especially when it comes down to me being a better human being, being a better man. I would even go as far as saying being a better black man, but everyone is going to see you how they need to see you based on maintaining their own sanity within their own conditioning. You know what I'm saying? Like you have to realize maybe something that can be seen as, bad could also be a blessing in disguise. You know? Something that is seen as bad can also be a blessing in disguise. Where maybe, when it comes down to the universe, maybe the pandemic was needed in reference to people being able to reset their minds. Reset their minds and then eventually go back into the world with a renewed perspective. You know? What do y'all think?
I agree. I definitely agree on the reset your minds. And then I really agree uh, on the point that you made to um, what something can seem as bad as, is it's not always that way. And I have an example where I know someone who has a daughter that's an introvert.
Mm-hmm.
And typically a situation like this where she is, mandated to kind of stay at home would be ideal for her, right?
Yep.
But this was a situation where she was still in school, so she had to do virtual school, and she actually came out of her shell. Yeah. So, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but you know how you get on those Zoom calls or those, those Teams calls and things.
Yeah.
Not comfortable with going there, with turning on the camera.
Mm-hmm.
From my understanding, she was very comfortable with turning on her camera, which is really big for somebody who enjoys, probably staying by themselves,
Mm-hmm.
maybe not socializing as much with other people. To them, that's a big thing. So she enjoyed that part of it. So she actually flourished during the pandemic. So
Right.
that's the good part about it. And the other good part about it is that I would say that people really got in touch with themselves. Not only did they have an opportunity to learn their family, because you don't know your family. I mean, even kids,
Right.
some parents think you have different parents, different parents different parent types who practice different parenting, but you have some parents who just don't listen to their kids, who kind of come from that old school mentality of what I say goes. I know more than you. I'm right, you're wrong,
Yeah.
right? But during the pandemic, and hopefully some parents kind of changed, kind of altered the way they, kind of did that. Because if you, and I would like to think that they had to, because eventually the child is going to, it's going to be some rebuttal there.
Right.
Because you're in the same quarters, and it
Hmm.
doesn't really matter what their age is. Even a baby, if a baby doesn't want to eat carrots and you're trying to force its mouth again, I don't want it. I don't want the anyway. I'm like rambling, but what I was going to say is that this gave families an opportunity to learn each other, parents to learn their kids, siblings to kind of learn each other better.
Hmm.
If you were in a relationship, whether it's a spouse, a significant other, a domestic partnership, whatever,
Right.
you got a chance to learn that person,
Hmm.
or not learn that person, but kind of relearn that person. And so that really, I think, came into play. And not only that, you got a chance to actually learn yourself if you took out that time. If for those people who did kind of carve out that time and said, look, I haven't taken time out for me most times because your work and life balance is just not, it's just not balanced, right?
Yeah.
Work usually outweighs whatever you have going on in your personal life.
Hmm.
So hopefully during the pandemic, in the midst of all the deaths, the heightened levels of depression,
Yep.
that not being sure about your job security, it's a whole bunch of things that were just going on. But hopefully people took out time to kind of get back in tune with themselves, figured out what they wanted, right? And
Hmm.
then people who did become unemployed, unfortunately, maybe they took out time to kind of figure out what it is they really want to do,
Right. Right.
right? So that's
Absolutely.
kind of how I think about it.
So I got four specific points that I need to speak on when it came down to what you said, Nat. So the first point I want to talk about is parenting ideologies, parenting styles. Okay, I
Don't do
definitely,
it. Don't do it.
I need to do. I got to do it. I got to do it.
The parents are gonna come for you. Like the
Facts.
lady did
Well, I
say.
mean, we got a parent in here, so I'm gonna say what I need to say. So let me get into it. Here's the thing. Um, and I say this, and I'm gonna say it. Yes, I am not a parent as of yet, and yes, I want to be a parent. I don't just only want to have children. And I don't even think a lot of people understand the difference between the two.
That's almost like saying you don't know what the difference is between being a teacher and an educator. And I'm gonna just say that.
Okay,
I'm gonna just
so
leave it alone.
okay, here's my take on the difference. Okay, when you say um, you just want to have children, potentially, in most cases, not all cases, because there's always exceptions to a rule. In most cases, you just wanting to have children, maybe you are circumventing all the details that comes with you eventually being the best parent that you possibly can. And you may be only thinking about the aspect of being able to have a little person. Okay? Maybe you're only thinking about that versus the details, intricacies, you know, I could say a whole lot of synonyms. All the things in reference to the aspect of being a parent. Okay? Now, I read a lot. I read a lot. And I'm going to always say I read a lot because it's just what I do. All right? I love reading. I'm a lover of words. I am a logophile by definition. Yes, logophile. Yes, that is a word. It's a word that you can use now. if you didn't know what the word was. All right? Logophile. Okay? Logophile. Nevertheless, for me, when I become a parent, I understand all the tools that I have in my brain on me being the best parent I could be. Maybe, let's just say, 40% of those tools may not work, but the other 60% can lead me to another 100%. And then that other 100% probably drop, let's say, 35% away from that, right? And then I have 65, but then that other 65 can lead me to another 100. Let me explain. All tools may not necessarily work for every child. One tool may not work for all children. you know, but the aspect of being able to explore and change up the ways that you need to parent your kids, it's definitely what is needed, and also can contribute to the mental health of your children with establishing in their mind the best memories that they can possibly have, so later on down the line they can be upstandable adults one day. I think the biggest thing that I say, especially in reference to parenting, anyone who's a parent, the biggest thing I say is, and this is one of the things when my kids are yay high, I'm gonna tell them, starting off, no matter how young they are, I'm gonna tell them, and they're probably gonna end up learning, what I mean once they get older. But that's what it is. What it is. I'm gonna end up telling them, I'm the catalyst for you having a foundation of growth. But inevitably, when you become an adult, you will be the beneficiary of your life. You will be the beneficiary. You will gain what you need to gain from your life, because with me being the catalyst, I've just given you a foundation of tools for you to be able to use so you can live your best life the best way you know how. That's up to you. It's not up to me. I'm already living my life. I'm already doing the things when it comes down to my life, right? But also in turn, when you're in this household, one of the things you need to understand about me being your parent, me being your father, I'm just trying to help you establish that good foundation with me being that catalyst. That's what I'm trying to do. Okay? Now, with me saying all of that, mind you, these are things that I've read out of books. Okay? These are things I've read out of books. Definitely. But I look forward to putting them into practice. Like, I've already talked to my wife about it. When I become a daddy, oh yeah, I'm going to be that daddy. And she's like, what you mean by that? You'll see. You know what I'm saying? You'll see. I'm going to be that one. I'm going to be at the soccer games on some shit like, hey, he tried to kick you at the soccer game, beat his ass. Nah, I'm not going to be like that. Nah, I really am. I don't give a fuck. Fuck all rest of the other kids. It's just about my kids. I don't give a damn. Okay? I don't give a damn. Kick that kid in the head with the cleats. Just, all you need to do is just a little trickle of blood, and they'll leave you the fuck alone, okay? Just a little trickle of blood. That's all you need. Anyway.
You may be getting kicked out of nursery school for sure, okay? For sure, okay?
Well, you got to teach them to defend themselves. By any means necessary, you got to teach them that. Nah, let me stop. All right. But what I'm saying is, the parent being the catalyst, the child who eventually is going to grow to be an adult, because I also believe that children should be raised in phases, because the phases are essentially between ages in reference to their developmental times. When they become a teen, they're on that brink of adulthood. And then once they actually become an adult, as a parent, we must realize, okay, yeah, So my child is an adult, not my child is still a child because I birthed that child and my child will always be a child to me. Like often happens in black households when it comes down to mama, who's like, I brought you in this world. What can I do? I think y'all know the rest.
I'll take you out of here. And I was gonna say, and some people feel that way, or some parents feel that way. I would I would argue that it's not so much that they see them as a child, but listen, if I'm still paying that phone bill, if you still living in my house, if you're eating my food, if you're driving my car, if you're going to college and I'm paying for them classes and you got a C or a D, that's the household I came from. Look,
Yeah, I get it. I understand.
you are a child. You are a child until you prove to me that you can financially support yourself. That I mean, it's just a whole host of things. Now, to society, yes, society says, and the law says that you are, grown at 18 or 21. Would tell the law to come get this 18-year-old out my house. Let the law take care of him, right? Because you don't want to put him out. You can't do anything at 18, or 21 for that matter. Most people are not even out the house. Honestly, at least these days, to like 25, going to 20, and that's late. I don't know what's going on with that, but that's just reality. That's reality, even if you have a degree, because most times you don't even know what you're going to do after college.
Hmm.
You probably won't. If you do, decide to work after well, you have to work or start a business or whatever.
Hmm.
But when you do finally land that job, it's probably not going to be a job that you majored in. That's out of your field.
Right.
So you got and then they want to save money, so they're in your house. Ain't don't want to pay nobody's rent, but you just ate my last piece of chicken that I planned on eating when I got home today from my. I'm just. That's how it went down in my household. Now I can't. That's it. That's all I want to say.
Okay.
And you just asked me, drinking the
So now let me tell you what book readers what parenting is really like.
Okay. All right. What you got? What you got?
Parenting is like taking a CPR class and then somebody dropping dead in the parking lot on the way out, and you got to try to remember all the CPR that you learned in the class for 3 hours that you didn't really pay attention to. That's what parenting is. That's exactly what it is. Because when they give you that baby in the hospital, they leave. As a pregnant woman, the nurses be all over you. Are you okay? Let me listen to you. See, fellow, he didn't fall. He just didn't land good. But anyway, they, they give you the baby and they don't give you no like booklet or no pamphlet or nothing. They it's every man for itself. They might help you feed the baby if the baby not feeding well, but that's the only real way that they'll help you.
Hmm.
Like it is all trial and error, and half of the books don't they they beautiful up
Mm.
what the actual what really goes on.
Yeah.
So when you read it and then when it happens, you're not prepared for it because it's not what you saw in the book.
Right. Right.
So and the other half of the stuff they don't even put in the book because they don't want to scare you and cause people never to have children. So
How can I say this? I'm a very pragmatic, stoic, realistic person. Okay? Like I don't believe that how can I say this? I don't believe that you should protect children from every single little thing, you know, that happens in the world. But I do agree with also you must give context to things that the child ends up becoming exposed to without you exposing them to that. Okay? Another thing I want to say. Yeah, I ain't a parent yet. I don't know really what the legwork truly is about.
You don't get off. That's it.
Oh yeah, well no, see that's the thing. Like, I see here's the funny thing about me, and maybe this is how crazy I am. So, uh, I understand potentially the reality of not getting off, but I don't see parenting as a job. I
I
just
just want to listen to some ratchet music in the car without my daughter trying to twerk in the back. That's all I'm saying. That's what I mean by off. I don't mean off. I just want to, listen to a song without my daughter singing Cardi B in the back. That's all I want. That's it.
okay. All right. I mean, you know, whatever children are exposed to, inevitably they end up picking up on. Like Cardi B or Megan Thee Stallion or
No, Disney
like
music. We listen to Disney music in the car
okay,
and a little bit of opera. Give her some well-roundedness.
okay,
And that's about it because she'll repeat all of that. So we don't listen to none of that in the car.
okay. I'm just saying, it'll be mind-boggling that all of a sudden, singing, Mickey and then the singing of Megan, just happened, at the same time. But it's okay. It's all right.
She's not doing that.
All right. But yeah.
They teach SEL at school. Do you know what that is, Natalie?
SEL
It's social emotional learning.
learning, and that's
So
Montessori,
they
right?
teach them how to be in touch with their feelings.
Yeah, Montessori. Yeah, of course. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I feel like it's a setup for CPS to be a trial. that's that's really what I think. It's a setup.
Okay.
And that kind of like segments into what I was talking about too. So that makes sense, like SEO,
Yeah.
um, or kids being in touch with their feelings.
Well, I mean, I do believe children should have a good baseline of being able to learn how to deal with their emotions, how to deal with their thoughts. You know, if we're not really giving the children, some type of pathway to be able to understand what they're actually thinking, you know, give them some context, at least a baseline context of what they're thinking, having them being able to learn critical thinking skills, then, it's unfortunate that we're not facilitating that learning, facilitating them being able to learn that ability at the youngest age possible. I'll say at the youngest age possible because developmental patterns differentiate among children. It's not just one method fits all. Which, speaking on education, which in modern education, which is essentially taken back from the education back then when it came down to the what's the word the Prussian model of education, as far as having all children in one classroom, and then you end up giving the instruction then the children end up going to lunch, and then they come back from lunch, more instruction, and then they go home. That's the Prussian model of education. But even way back when, we still see that model till this day, even though we have certain school models such as Montessori, such as charter schools, being able to change that format, being able to change that model, and make it more conducive for the children to develop certain critical thinking skills, which I think is a great thing. Um, but I will say, for every school model, there are pros and there are cons for everyone. You know, in addition to the fact that for the pros and cons, it's really up to the parents to be able to acknowledge and see those pros and cons, but then also those pros and cons can be subjective. You know, something that may be seen as a pro to someone else could be seen as a con to another. You know, so but then one aspect that I would like to be able to get back into is the aspect of kids being at home and then having to go through remote learning during COVID. You know, I know Lady D was talking about that before, as far as being able to facilitate, being being the director, of the movie and everything, when it came down to the kids, so I totally get it. But, who were the parents that, were frustrated at the fact that now they have to be the director? They have to, get their kids to be able to sit in that chair and just look at a screen and be like, "Hi, Miss So and So, how you doing?" Once they end up turning off the mute button, and then once they turn back on the mute button, cursing the kid out like so bad because of the fact that they, was trying to make a joke out of it or something. Like so. I mean, it's kind of this thing of where, what is the kid going through in addition to the parent? Now the parent having to take on more responsibilities in reference to facilitating the learning for their children, but the child now being in a different model that the child is not normally used to. What y'all think?
I was going to. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want to say something?
Go ahead. What you got?
Okay.
What you got, Nat?
I was going to say, I think the frustration came from different sides. You had the parent, so you have the parent or the person who knows or who probably has experience, for example, with using, communication devices and computers. But then you have those who don't have that experience. And that was a reality, I think, during the pandemic.
Right.
So now you have a parent there who's not familiar with Windows operating. No, I'm sorry. Most schools use those Chromebooks, just the Windows system, which is what most schools use. It's a big difference. It's not the same. I mean, even if you're trying to print screen, turn down the volume, simple basic functions on the Chromebook can send you into high level frustration.
Yeah.
Because there were times where I was helping my niece and I was like, I know how to use a computer. But the Chromebook was like a foreign thing in the house that you had to relearn. But imagine being a parent who don't know how to use that at all.
Any computer.
So now they have to teach, or try to or attempt to teach their child how to log on. For example, there was one time where, so my boyfriend has kids, okay? His daughter was in class one day and she was, and I didn't realize she was in class because she just kept cartwheeling throughout the house. And I'm like, what's going on? And when I finally looked over,
Hey. All right.
I'm so sorry, y'all. I was cooking breakfast for her, thinking that class started at one time. It did not. But she already knew how to log on. She knows, like she's extremely bright, okay?
Right.
She asks lots of questions. She's very curious, very inquisitive.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you can forget her age. She's only 7, okay? But she is very much like, she wants to know why something happens. Well, why is this? Well, what does this mean? Well, that. So she's literally cartwheeling back and forth in the house, and she's going back to the computer, almost the only child participating. I did not help her log on. I did not help her get in class. But that's her. What if you have that child who doesn't know how to, who doesn't know how to do that? There was one incident where she was in class and there was a parent in the classroom with the kids talking, having a full-blown, real, like, live conversation with the teacher about trying to check the email. The teacher went, oh, and this is real. I hate to say that, and I'm not going to say what ethnicity she was. I'm not going. I can't do that. But she was in there.
All right.
A Zoom chat with the teacher and these kids who are fairly younger than her.
Yeah.
Or significantly younger than her, I should say.
Right.
who knows how to do these things, and she was struggling trying to check an email
Mm-hmm.
that had the assignment that her son needed to do.
Right.
That was like mind blowing. I was like, wow. So what do you do with that? Do we need to educate parents who just don't know how to do these things? Maybe it should be a training, and that's something that I kind of thought about. That if you are a parent and we do have to revert back to virtual school, because some people are, some states are going back to virtual school.
Right. Right.
So that's just something I thought about.
You know.
But that's because, oh, sorry. That's because they don't, like, in school, they don't send it to your actual email. They put everything in Google Classroom. So then you got to know your kid's ID, whatever, to get into that. And but it's not the same thing that was in like the whatever other, because she was doing the math thing was one app, and then something else was some other app, and they all had different logins, so it just was all a mess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but she didn't know how to use an email at all. You see
Mm.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that was the level of ignorance that she was on. She just did not know. She was just ignorant to how to check an email. Like she did not. She just did not know.
Yeah.
So half the class, or let's say 15 minutes of that class, which is probably about like an hour, is virtual, was the teacher teaching the parent how to check an email.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was like, wow, this is a lot going on in this
I think
class.
I
But
think the biggest thing, and I mentioned this before. The biggest thing is, what is in your emergency action plan. Because I mean, I've said before, of course, pandemics we now know were not in a lot of schools' emergency action plans. You know, now it's that thing of, okay, are you going to implement in the plan for pandemics? Are you going to implement in the plan a course for computer literacy? Within the plan, are you going to also, in reference to students going back to school, are you going to implement a mental health course in reference to the transition to distant learning, then the transition back to traditional learning? you know are these going to be a thing? And I'm going to honestly say, because I kind of understand a little bit about the monopoly of education in this country, I don't believe that's happening at the city level, let alone the state level. You know, Now, maybe it could happen at a district level, you know, but depending on what the superintendent of that district can do as far as having a certain level of influence on his or her bosses, you know? So, what can really happen now with all of this data that has been gained as far as parents not having a certain level of computer literacy? Um, Children may not know how to adapt to a certain learning style. Teachers, I'll say educators being able to understand how to adopt different teaching methods within different avenues or different mediums of teaching, be it distance learning, traditional learning, or a hybrid. You know, can these things now be adopted into an EAP? Do we have the money? I know the answer is no. But do we have the money? Do we got that coin, as my wife says? I love that word. Do we got that coin See that coin. Then we got that coin to be able to put toward having a better plan, facilitating a better plan. I don't believe the United States as of right now, and I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't believe the United States as of right now has any mindset on changing education for the better. Because still, I believe, even though we still have different school models now, still I believe the consensus as far as mindset on schooling is still within a sense of indoctrination, not truly education. Two different things, But then also, another thing I would say, indoctrination gets away from being able to learn other things that help with being more resilient in life, let alone being able to pass an exam. Because anyone can pass an exam. Someone who is very bright can pass an exam. But are you learning the necessary things that you need to learn when it comes down to having a good life? Yeah, you can have a good life as far as being able to set your mind to learning a specific skill. Let's just say, IT, information technology, computers, networking, scripting, coding, programming, all that stuff, right? You have that skill, but do you know how to still live your life? What is the difference between characteristics and character? How can we implement those things in reference to having the best mental health possible when we are going through changes that are inevitable? Because I say all the time, change is inevitable. It's going to happen whether you like it or not. The only thing that we can do is try to be as resilient as possible, in addition to taking things when they do come to us and not reacting to it, going through a sense of cognitive dissonance. You know what I'm saying? Anybody want to pick up on that? Okay, ain't nobody got nothing to say. Hey, Sonny, what you got to say over there? You been quiet this whole episode. I'm just saying.
Well, I'll just say this about in terms of like kids, teaching kids to understand the difference between character traits and character.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely a disparity within the public education system, or just the education system in general. I'm comfortable with saying, based on what I've seen and what I've known, in the United States at least, with teaching kids not just to be good at reading and math, but to know how to be a good human being and contribute positively to society as a whole, especially when we're talking about kids growing up and not, or becoming adults. Like, eventually you're going to have to go out into this world and face reality, and there's things that you're going to need to know, life skills, social skills, communication, like compassion, all these things that adults seem to be struggling with. And that's because they didn't learn these things growing up. They went through school to learn how to do multiplication and how to write an essay and all these things, but they didn't learn emotional intelligence or all these other things or financial literacy. Like, we're seeing people are talking about these things more and more. Like, this is real stuff. This is important things that you need to learn before you actually get thrown into adulthood. So I'm glad that the conversations are actually being had now. But even going back to what you said, are these superintendents, are these, people in charge of implementing, curriculum and stuff like that, are they going to actually consider these things and fight to have these things brought into the school systems? Because parents these days, they fight over the smallest things, such as their kids wearing masks in school. They're protesting because they don't want their kids to wear masks in school. So how do you think they're going to be able to, be okay with their children learning how to be more compassionate towards others that may, not be maybe different from you in, such and such ways?
Mm-hmm. Right. I believe that the home is the first educational institution, and that the home is the last educational institution. Let me explain. So, I don't believe any parent, and like I said, I'm a man that has no children yet, okay? I have no kids yet. But I don't believe a parent should completely trust any outside educational institution to foundationally teach their kids what they need to know. Where oftentimes, and I'm not saying all the time because exceptions to a rule, oftentimes you do have parents that honestly believe that the school will teach the kids everything they need to know about life in addition to what they need to know about what they need to learn at school. No. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. No. Like, it's mind-boggling to me when, and I get it, parents get busy, but also parents get busy. Parents get busy, but also parents get busy. Okay? Yeah. Parents get busy, but also parents get busy. Okay? And what I mean by that is parents get busy when it comes down to being able to sift through all the outside world things that are going on in reference to them being able to go out and make the best coin they possibly can, right? But then also parents get busy in reference to potentially having to make sure their kids are maintained. Okay? But in the scope of only maintaining kids, not understanding maintaining kids in addition to raising them. Maintenance and raising, two totally different things. You know? Where maintaining a child is all the physical stuff. You know, all the tangibles. Raising is the intangibles. The things that you gotta put up in here. You know, being able to fill this with the best knowledge possible. Where, yeah, I read, but I read for a reason. Because I want to be as prepared as possible, but I also know there's still things that I can't be fully prepared for. I get it. Do I give a shit? Hell no, I want to have some babies. Yeah, I said it. I said it. I want to have some babies. You know? I really do.
Can I ask a question?
What's up? What you gotta ask? Like, what's up?
I was having this conversation with a friend a couple of days ago, so I'm curious to know why why would you say is the reason that you want to have kids?
Well, I say I want to have some babies. Obviously, I'm joking, but I more so want to be a parent. Now, the reason why I say I want to have some babies, jokingly, but the reason why I want to be a parent more so is because I want to be able to contribute to this world in reference to what would be considered, in every sense of words, um, human beings that can be a part of society that can contribute to the growth of society. That's how I see it in reference to being able to raise my children the best way I know how, but still, maybe my version of the best way is not the best version once they get here. Where being resilient in the scope of trying to give them the tools to give them a foundation so they can be the best beneficiary. So that's my reasoning. What was the reason of who you talking about?
The conversation I was having with my friends.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, because we both of us don't have kids, but we were somehow on the topic of. I think I was talking about one of my sister's kids or something like that, and we were just talking about actually thinking about why do people decide to have kids or why do people decide to start families, because that's one of the typical checking a box things that adults do at a certain point. Is like, oh, I've reached age 30, so let me go ahead and start my family, because that's the normal thing for you to do in society. And obviously it doesn't always work out that way. People have kids unplanned and stuff like that. But we were just talking about really thinking what are the reasons that one might decide to start a family or want to have kids.
Can I give a general answer of why I think most people end up starting families or having kids? I have two answers. One of them falls within the conditioning of culture, and another falls within the conditioning of religion.
Mm.
I thought I had the flu. That was it. I didn't think.
Well, wait a minute. Wait a minute. You thought you had the flu? You thought you had the flu
Yeah, I
when you
went
came
to
down
the
the first
hospital
baby?
because I was sick. And I thought I had the flu. And when she came in there, her face looked all funny. I said, Jesus, is it cancer? And she was like, ma'am, no, you're pregnant. Congratulations. Here's your discharge papers. And get the hell out of this. Oh, all right.
Okay.
Being a parent is the most rewarding, scariest, hardest, bestest job that you'll ever have. There'll be times where you be like, oh, look at them acting like me. I mean, unfortunately, my children they don't look like me. They just clumsy like me. So they got all the worst traits they could have got from their mama. But when you look at them, it's like, for me, I always wanted to be a mom. Even when I was a little girl, I wanted to be a singing teacher with 4 children. That was what I told people when I was a little girl.
Okay.
And I started babysitting children in like junior high school. So I've always taken care of kids my whole life. So I thought that being a nanny for 15 years was going to naturally transition me into being a mother. And that is lies. Lies and deceit. Don't let nobody say, "Oh, I'm a great nanny, so I'm a great mother." It's not the same thing. When you're a nanny, you're real meticulous. You pack everybody's little snacks for the day, and you get your songs together and make sure everybody's having a good time. When you're a mom, you're like, "Look, just look." And that's it. Just look. Just stop whatever you're doing. Whatever you think you about to do, don't do that either.
Hey, let me ask you a question, and this is gonna
Mhm.
kind of take us on a little course, hopefully. Uh, Let me ask you a question. Do you believe the thought of you wanting to be a mom or wanting to have kids at a young age, that thought was given to you or that thought manifested within yourself?
I don't think it was ever given to me because my grandmother's sex talk was, "You see how many kids your brother got? Don't do that." So it was, nobody ever told me.
Hey, bro.
My brother has 7 children.
Okay.
So so
Okay.
nobody ever told me that I should have children. I think that, when you growing up, you think that people supposed to get married and then have children, like you see that. But I will say that there is pressure to have children when you don't have children, because when you remember Miss Gray,
Oh yeah, Miss Gray was dope.
I saw
Yeah, I remember Miss Gray. Yeah.
I love her.
Yeah.
Saw Miss Gray at somebody's funeral.
Mm.
I don't remember.
You're right. Right.
And she was like, "You got children?" I said, "No." She said, "You married?" I said, "No." She said, "Well, what's wrong with you, man?" I don't think that there's anything. But the next time I saw her, I had a baby. I was like showing her pictures, like, "See, I'm normal. Look." So there is definitely a stigma to have children. I don't think that I was pressured with that until I was like 28 with no kid.
Mm. Okay.
And but even my grandmother at 28 years old was like, "You sick?" Because by that time she had Alzheimer's, so her version of pregnant was sick. She was like, Did I remember you
Facts.
telling me that you was
Old school
sick?" I
terms.
said, "Sick? I ain't got no." "Oh, yeah, I'm still sick." She hung up. I was grown.
Right.
So it's stigmas on both sides, no matter how old you get.
Yeah, like, and the reason why I asked that is because we don't really know what conditioning we end up going through when we're younger until we realize a certain level of education that we do have in gaining knowledge, and then pinpoint what moments happen in our lives where we were fed certain information that made us think a certain way. You know, I give a basic example. What you got? You got something?
Now that you say that, I can you get your thumb? I will say that I lost my mom when I was 5, and so she had 4 children. So I think that for me, that was where I got that number from, because she had 4 kids.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that I was necessarily conditioned, but I knew that, like, I wanted 4 kids. But now that I've had 3 children, I'm like, no thanks. We might go ahead, pass. Go ahead, pass.
All right.
Yeah. I pushed out 3 kids. I remember. She remembers.
Okay. All right. All right. So,
And now it's time to go.
here, here, here's my take on how things can affect us at a young age, and we end up projecting certain things that may have affected us at a young age at an older age. To give an example, so let's just say someone who is 5 years old, they've been exposed to family members that consistently drink alcohol. You know, it's a normal thing to, have family, at the dinner table, if the family actually does sit at the dinner table, because I think that's a lost art. Um, but when it comes down to families sitting at a dinner table, okay, you know, everybody at the table has a glass of wine. But then let's just say families end up having, a party or something, or have, invite people over. Oh, everyone is drinking hard liquor, no matter what the hard liquor is, right? But then it gets to a point where the 5-year old turns 6, turns 7. they're 7 years old, right? And let's just say one of the uncles of the 5 year old, during a barbecue or cookout, you know, say cookout, but during a barbecue, ends up slipping, the 7 year old, some Heineken, like a sip of Heineken. You know what I'm saying? And then now, let's say the 7 year old ends up becoming 9 year old. Now, another uncle, different uncle, ends up slipping the 9 year old a sip of Jack and Coke. You know what I'm saying? No, no.
I was in the wrong family.
Well,
My father was a wine hunter, but he ain't never give me that.
all right, so let me continue on with the story. All right, so 9 year old Jack and Coke, right? Now, the kid is 11. Okay, the kid is 11, and now one of the uncles is like, okay, now it's time for you to have your first beer, your own beer, and gives the kid a Heineken, a whole bottle of Heineken, right? But mind you, the kid is only able to drink at family gatherings. But let's push it up ages. Now the kid is 17, about to graduate high school. They end up getting into college. They end up going to school. Now, for the years previous, right, those 7 years, give or take, they have been drinking and also getting into trouble when it comes down to their parents more so. But the kid has been protected to some degree in reference to the law. Now, kids ends up going to college, 17 years old, freshly in college, fresh meat, right? Kid has learned how to drink being at parties. And then for the years, the kid has gone and drinking on their own. Now, one of the first parties they end up going to in college, they get completely trashed. Okay? Tipsy to the 10th power. All right? And there's a stunt that was done maybe at a frat house they ended up going to. And they ended up getting drunk and decided to jump off the second story balcony, and then they break their leg. Who's at fault? The kid that jumped off the balcony or the uncle that introduced the kid to alcohol?
Okay, so I think that could be looked at both ways, from both angles, because um, I think that's a part of growing pains. Like, even because I know when I went to college, my friends were more advanced than I was because I had never drank, and they had been drinking in high school, and so I wasn't exposed to that. So, and they still did dumb shit. I mean, like, because kids grow up and you get to college and you following your friends and you gonna do dumb stuff on your own without being introduced to alcohol at a young age. Now, table that and go back. My biological father was an alcoholic, but also schizophrenic. Now, when I took him to a doctor's appointment, he basically told the doctor that he had been drinking hot beer since he was 13 years old, like in his father's basement. So nobody had to introduce it to him. It was something that he decided that he wanted, and he made a conscious effort to do that from 13 to when he died at 60 something from alcohol poisoning, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like his heart stopped. Then he was drunk. So, like it I think that everybody makes a choice about what they want to do. Like because of that, my little brother who's in the military, he doesn't really drink like that because he was exposed to alcoholism by my father.
Right.
Now, I wasn't. I lived with my grandparents, and they didn't. I mean, my grandfather, he would like have a bottle of that bumpy bottle gin,
Mm-hmm.
but that's really all he drank, and he kept that to himself. And so I wasn't really exposed to that. And now I like me a little Corona every now all the time, but it had nothing to do with being exposed to it.
You say bumpy bottle of gin. It reminds me of me joking with when my parents about every time they have their anniversary. I tell them don't overdose on Ripple.
Exactly, that's that old people drink.
Right. But but it really depends. I think whatever chemicals are happening within your brain at the time of being exposed to a particular catalyst will have you do or not do said action. You
Yeah,
know,
it depends on your experience with it. I had people who was given alcohol when they were like younger, and it made them not like it. It
mm-hmm.
made them never want to experience that again because they had a bad, reaction from it. So I don't think it had nothing to do with you being given. So if you decide you don't like it, you're not gonna like it. That's just like
Fair.
be given grape soda. It's disgusting. I won't still drink it.
I agree and I disagree. So I agree with the fact that, like, part of me is like, yeah, because I'm also like, you choose to do something. Like, I'm very strong on that. But
Mm-hmm.
in this case, if we're talking about like alcohol, and I, I personally put alcohol in the substance abuse category. I really do. And so I see it from maybe a scientific point of view too.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if your body, if the makeup of your body is chemically attracted to whatever you're drinking, right? So for example, my mother, and I don't share this, but I'm gonna just share it real quick.
Mm-hmm.
My mother is a recovering heroin addict, right?
Okay.
She did heroin up until, I don't know, I have no idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have a thing where I don't smoke. Why? Because I've watched my mother do heroin. I've watched her do it. I know what it looks like. So to Lady D's point, I would never do it. Why? Because I was exposed to it. That's my choice. But on the other end of it, if I decided to try it, or if you have somebody that does try it, let's just say their intention is, well, let me just try this, or let me just drink this beer and see how it tastes. That's them making the choice to drink the beer. But if they become addicted to it, I kind of see it in a way where, what if, in their chemical makeup of their body becomes addicted to that alcohol? Now they have an addiction, and they never intended on being an addict. They just wanted to take a drink,
Right.
right?
Right. It's like
And so, yeah.
you
So
like
I kind of think of it like that too.
like you end up when you give exposure to something to someone that cannot consent, you end up opening the floodgates for a traumatic life experience.
But isn't that borderline abuse? Because it's more like forcing.
I believe it
It's
is
not like
abuse.
here
I
you
believe it
go. Do you
is.
want this? Oh, you don't want it? I'll drink the rest. Like it's not saying that. It's like you drink this.
I
Like
believe
that's
I believe it is a form of abuse because you are now opening up the door for said individual person as far as them being able to live their life in the best way, you're opening up a door for them not to be able to do that. And you don't know what's going to happen. You have no clue. You have no clue what's going to happen in someone's life. No matter if you're an adult, you don't know what this child may go through with you giving them that exposure. You have no clue. But because you are having your best time and maybe how you see the best time, you're now projecting that onto the child, onto the youngster.
Can I make a real quick point?
Yeah, yeah.
So, Lady D in the beginning made a comment about the music that she plays in her car, right?
Yeah.
And she said that she chooses to play Disney music and classical music for the fact that her daughter may pick up on whatever music she likes.
Right, right, right.
For example, Cardi B. I'm gonna just weigh this out real quick. If it was a matter of choice, no matter how old they are, I'd say experiment and see what happens, right? Play something that you like. Although kids are like a sponge,
Very
right?
intuitive. Yeah,
They still like what they like also.
yeah.
If she doesn't like that song, chances are she probably won't even like, take to it. But and that's her choice. But if she likes that song, she's gonna take to it. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah,
It's not
there could
you
be,
see
and
what I'm saying?
I'll put it in this perspective. There could be a sense of either, this is garbage to me. I don't really like this. I'm not going to deal with that. Or there could be, well, maybe my parents won't let me listen to stuff like this in the home. So I'm going to go ahead and go out and think of various opportunities for me to listen to this music on my own.
No, that's a choice. If
That's
you
a
go
choice.
searching for it, that's you choosing that you have made that choice. Look, I can't do this at home, but maybe I can do this at Aunt So and so's house. Maybe Auntie So and so will kind of let me get away with it.
But we
That's you
then
making the choice.
but we then have to still talk about the responsibility and accountability of the parent giving the exposure.
Oh, absolutely. If the parent gives the exposure,
If
some parents have like I used to go to my group to my friend's house when I was younger, and in her house she had her parents had a wine cabinet. I'm not a big drinker. Some people can see that, oh, they just have a wine cabinet, but she also had kids in the house. So you could argue that that's her exposing her kids to alcohol. Now it had a lock on it,
lock,
so they probably can't, like they, they they may not be able to access it, but it is accessible. If they wanted it, they
where
could
the
get it. You know
where
what I mean? So that is exposure also,
where the lock can also influence a sense of rebellion
or
or
curiosity.
curiosity, and then maybe eventually rebellion. You know,
Yeah.
where let's let's tie this to COVID. Yeah,
There was a
Bring it
whole
on home. Bring it on home.
I'm bringing it home because we got a little bit more time left, just a little bit, tad bit. So I'm gonna bring it home. In the scope of before COVID, you're hardly around your family because of the work lives and school lives, right? Now, with being around your family 24/7 and you still have certain coping mechanisms, it gets amplified. you know, it gets amplified because now more exposure happens. You're now more so around them when it comes down to certain behaviors. You are now being exposed to more details behind the behavior. How do you think most families are able to deal with that? Especially during a time where you got to be in the house 24/7. People in 2020 coming out of 2020 going in 2021, what traumas did they really go through? Do they even know they have gone through traumas? You know what I'm saying? Where it's kind of this, I'm gonna put it in the perspective of a coin toss. Flipping a coin. You know, where you see someone has a coin, they end up putting the coin in their hand. They end up flicking the coin in the air. You see the coin rotating. You see the coin now either going back in the person's hand or, dependent upon the rules of flipping the coin, going completely on the ground. And then you see the choice, or sorry, you see the particular selection out of flipping the coin. Okay? Where I believe the person's hand itself is, if I could say this, the choice of action. The coin itself is what the exposure to the action can do. The flip in the air is how someone is responding to the action. The now coin going either in hand or on the ground is now the conditioning of the action. With that said, we're going to end it right here. One more thing? You got one more thing, Nat?
I have been waiting for this. I haven't. Just y'all, please, just bear with me just one more thing.
Okay.
I just have a question,
Yeah.
and I just want to back it up. Earlier, Sunny asked you. I think she asked you how or what your take was on, or she was talking about. Oh, I forgot. But anyway, you mentioned something about religion and culture,
Mm-hmm.
about why I guess people decide to have kids.
Yeah, that was
And
the
Yep.
was that the question?
Yep.
And then you responded from what you believe
The
are two.
general, I
I
believe,
just
in
want to hear
general.
why you think those two things, because it struck me. I mean, because it kind of triggered me. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Okay. So let me go into that real quick. So, culture, as far as, and this really is dependent upon any country when it comes down to the culture that people are consistently being exposed to. You know, in the United States, I believe more so we are an amalgamation or a melting pot of different cultures, just based on our history, right? So you may have a family that's very family oriented. You may have a family that doesn't really, in every sense of the words, sit at the table for dinner. You know what I'm saying? They sit in front of the TV, on the couch, eat their hungry man, TV dinner. You know what I'm saying? With the tasteless brownie and soggy fried chicken. You know what I'm talking about. But anyway, so
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
damn it.
don't sleep on the hungry man now.
But
I was about to say.
but but okay, I'm dissing hungry man. I probably should have said budget meals. But anyway, uh look, I ate a lot of TV dinners in my day. I actually, really had to learn how to cook, and I'm glad I did. I'm glad I learned how to cook and learn how to bake. But anyway, so uh so culture you're in, you know, in that culture, what are you being exposed to? In combination with the aspect of the religion that you are being exposed to based on the religion that your parents are. Where in most religions, there is a foundation of marriage being, of course, the wife and the husband should be doing certain things, the wife should be doing certain things, what may have you. You know what I'm saying? Where that exposure can influence others to do certain things in reference to what is being seen, what is being conditioned as being normal. This is normal. So I should be doing this. This is what I should be doing at this age. This is where I should be when I get to this age. This is where we should be in reference to being able to do what is necessary for us to live our better lives because Jesus said so.
I really think it comes down to that. Like, I really do think that most people do not think about why they themselves want to start a family or want to have kids. I think the
Right.
most young adults see that that is the norm. So this is what I have to do because society is telling me that this is what you do when you become an adult and you're living life. Like, I think now is the generation, and I don't want to take anything away from previous, generations or people in previous generations that have had the same sentiment, but I think it's becoming more normal or more popular now that young people are like, wait a minute, I don't know if I want to be a parent. I don't know if parenting or raising a child is for me,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and they're shunned. Like Lady D said, they're shunned by society. They're pressured by society. Oh, what is wrong with you? Why you don't want to have kids? Why are you 30 years old? You don't have kids. You don't have a husband. What's going on? What's wrong with you?
So one thing I want to say on that note is there's this thing going on when it comes down to my parents now. To give a little bit more context, my biological father was never in my life. I do have a stepdad. My mom, stepdad got married. You know what I'm saying? That's why he's my stepdad. And, I have thoughts in mind of actually doing the paperwork when it comes down to my stepdad adopting me. But, nevertheless, my parents, I speak on my stepdad and my mom's, right? So, they've been doing this thing where they know my situation when it comes down to me and my wife. Okay? Us, doing the distance thing, you know? But we still got married, so that probably shows you where my mindset is when it comes down to being able to love one person in the scope of monogamy, Because even though I say monogamy, that's also another thing to think about in reference to how religion does condition us to believe that monogamy is the best thing and only thing that needs to happen, and that's how we're more so conditioned to believe that monogamy is at the forefront of any relationship that we should have, without even exploring other factors in reference to the poly side of the game. But we're not really going to get into that on this episode. Nevertheless, I totally get the conditioning aspect. Now, what my parents are doing, because they know I'm married, even though me and my wife are eventually going to be in the same household, they're already talking about babies. I have told them, I love you, but right now, it's none of your business because the baby ain't here yet. I've told them.
They ain't trying to hear none of that.
I
Where them
know.
babies?
Yeah, absolutely. They don't care. You'll be like, when we gonna see a little you? When you could stop talking about seeing a little me, that's when you'll see one. You know what I'm saying? Like, stop. Just don't do that. First off, I don't need that pressure. That's the first thing. I don't. It's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. Why? Like, what is the point? What's the point? Like, I see it as, and I'm gonna just say it. This is how I see it. If as a youngster, before hitting the age of 18, you wanted me to keep it in my pants. If as between the ages of 18 to about, I'll say 27, you were like, live your life. And then after 27, you all of a sudden start talking about when you're going to get married. And then start talking about when you're going to have some babies. My thing is, at the end of the day, you do not control this kielbasa and what it does. I've told my mom this directly.
Please don't tell. Okay, you already told her. I was about to say, please don't tell your mother that.
I told her. This I'm real about it. Me and my mom can become very candid, where it's like I'll use choice words to get a point across, and then she'll be like, "Okay, son, like I'm gonna leave it alone." But she doesn't really leave it alone. She'll leave it alone for that conversation.
let me chime in real quick. So, because I know that we short on time.
Right.
Two quick things. One thing is that I know somebody who wanted to have kids since she was younger, and on the contrary, when she grew up, she did not grow up in that environment. Whether it worked against what she thought or for it, I don't know. But here's what I learned about it is that, and it wasn't a religious aspect. I don't even think there was a religious presence in the house at that time.
Mm-hmm.
At least not that I don't think she actively practiced or that her parents did or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But she always wanted to be married and have children. Now, when she got older, she did have children. Well, she does have children now,
Mm-hmm.
but she wanted to have children because I didn't realize that her family was as small as it is. It is literally, as of this date, only six members left. She is the last person in her family. So after she dies, her family line is just done,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So she wanted to have children because that's the reason why she doesn't want her family line to die with her, with her. So she did have kids. So that was her choice in having kids. On the other part of it, when you think about how people think about having kids, especially single people, I'm 35 right now, and I'll be 36. I have put some thought into not necessarily I have put a little bit of thought into having children, but I also have my own reasons of why I never had children.
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and those are just my personal reasons of why I never had children. But now that I'm getting older, right, and all of my friends have kids. Well, most of them have kids with two, and then my other family members have kids, and I see how my sister and her daughter interact with each other. As I get older, I think when I get old, I'm not gonna have nobody to kind of take care of me. Honestly, like that's something that I have been thinking about. So then I think about, well, do I want to physically have kids? I'm 35 years old. No, not really. I'm not trying to have no kids. But I have put some thought
Body
into.
is jacked after 30.
I'm not. I can't. I can't even. I can't. I'm telling you. I've been thinking like,
Before
man,
you before
not
you
really.
dispute that, because
I can't.
he was about to dispute it.
No, 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 no. Here's my take. Here's my take. I will
I
never.
have thought about adoption. I have. I put some thought into adoption, like some serious thought into adoption. So
I will never tell a woman what to do with her body. I will never tell a woman what to do with her body. But also, in turn, if I believe that woman is someone I care about, who's a family member that I love very much, and I believe they are harming themselves, then I will say something out of the scope of protecting my loved one. Okay? I'll definitely do that. Now, with that said, and I'm gonna put this out there, and maybe this can be, one of the topics that we talk about, in another episode. But paradox of choice. I think we need to explore that because even though the new generations now are more so asking why, I don't believe the previous generations have given them a good example of making the best choice for the individual that needs to make the best choice. Okay? But also, in turn, the most unasked question in the human language, any language, human language, is the question why. The question why facilitates critical thinking, which facilitates better ways to be able to make the best choice. With that said, I'm Frank, and I'm glad my co host came to join me in this episode. We talked about a lot of stuff. Nevertheless, y'all take it easy and have a wonderful week. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.